who is really the reason that we were here. So to cut back, we were at the town hall meeting in Metzley Falls in March, and Laura said, I have some prints. And often when people say they have prints, you really want to see them, but you have low expectations. But I saw those prints and they were amazing. They were some of the best prints I've ever seen in my whole life. And Dr. Rabbit Ali was there as well, and I said, Rob, you've got to come and see these prints. And he was there outstanding. So, because we were so amazed by the evidence that Laura produced here, we thought, A, it's a good opportunity to do an investigation, but B, we're very grateful that Laura has come out here in the middle of our investigation to tell us a little bit of the history and background to what she did. So Laura, first of all, thank you ever so much for being here.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little, thank you so much, can you tell us a little bit about how you got into this area and what persuaded you that it was a good area for us?
Well, 98, we found a track. Oh, the big track that I showed you. We knew what it was, but we wasn't sure. So we called a friend of mine on the coast, Fred Bradshaw, very good friend of mine, and he came up for hunting that year. We showed him the track, and he said, "You know what that is?" I said, "Yeah, it's Bigfoot." He said, "You're right." He'd been into it for like 30 years, so that got me started. And we would come up here every summer and camp the whole summer. We'd come up in about June and leave in September. And this is where we got a lot of vocal, we got a lot of tracks, we seen a lot of Bigfoot at a distance. They was never close enough. At a point in time, they'd come in, take things off my table and leave things, put things back. Like, I had a Pepsi sitting there that was about half empty, and they took the glass and the Pepsi but left me a pine cone on the table. And they would do that.
Right. So you had an established interaction with them.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
So when you say you saw them from a distance, there's a myriad of questions. But first of all, can you describe what you saw?
Bulky, wide, thick through. I've seen a brown one. I've seen a black one. You can see I got a couple pictures of one that I took. You see the head, but never close enough to identify their eyes, their ears, but knowing that it was there because it was so enormous compared to what else is in here.
So how big was it?
Oh God.
Roughly.
I'm not very good at, probably that thick through. They were standing facing, sideways, not that thick through. They were standing looking at you. They was probably that wide.
What about the height?
Huge. Huge. We've seen quite a few of them at the north end of the lake, and you could see this much above the trees or the brush. And the reason I know that's what it was is because the following day I would go up and investigate, and we would find tracks where one had stood and watched the camp from the end of the lake.
So when you say big, was it 7 feet, 8 feet?
Yeah, exactly.
Around that. That.
Some of that brush down there is like 6 foot tall, and he was probably this much higher than that brush.
So, forgive me for asking the question, but it's important, I believe. Many people might say, well, it's a bear, there are bears in the area, we know there are. What would you say to people who say that?
What I'd like to say, I can't say on camera. No, I would tell them they wasn't quite sure what they were talking about.
So you're adamant that it was a...
Oh, absolutely. Bear don't walk on 2 feet. They do.
Did you see any of the locomotion, any of the movement of the creatures or anything?
Yes, I did. I caught one out on power line with my big scope that I was watching a clear cut, and he come out through there, and he was big. He was probably 8-9 foot tall. He never seen me. He was walking sideways, and he was this thick through, and he was walking on 2 legs, and his arms was like this, but they were below his knees when he stood. And he walked through that clearing, and I watched him as he went through, and he was black.
And how did you feel when you saw it?
Excited. I'd like to get a little closer, but I couldn't run fast enough to catch up with him.
Were you afraid or just excited?
No. I've never been afraid of him. There's nothing in the woods to be afraid of. We come out here, I pack all the time. I never had any problems with them. They never caused any problems. We never caused any problems. We never shot no guns off or anything to spook them, and they would come right down in our camp.
So when you say they come down in the camp, was it a specific time they'd come? Would it be...
In the evening, late in the evening, early in the mornings.
So when you say late in the evening, forgive me, what time are we?
Oh, we usually went to bed about 10, 11, and they were down probably 1, 2 o'clock.
So they come in the early hours of the morning.
Yes, sir.
And would you hear them moving through your camp?
Not really. We just see if things gone. Like Fred Bradshaw had a tent set there, and he had a big ice chest full of different things. And this one little guy, he wasn't very big. I think he was a juvenile. He would come down from up there, down here, take his ice chest and pull it back up the hill. We would get up in the morning, they'd pull it back down. That evening, they'd pull it back up. This went on like 3 or 4 days.
So it was like a game with him?
Yeah, it was like a game with him. And I understand that these juveniles, if they start something like that and you interact with them, they will continue that.
Did you ever see the shape of the head? I'm always interested in the shape of the head of the. I know you saw it from a distance. Is there any clues you could give about the physical description?
It looked like a human head, except bigger. And you could see the hair. I never got to see the ears, so I couldn't tell you if they were huge, if they were small. I wasn't close enough to be able to see their eyes. There's only one place in the book that I've got entered where we spotted some eyes, but that was through a night scope at night about 10 o'clock at night. We ran into some over there on the power line, and we got to see their eyes, which was big and huge.
Did they have any eye shine?
Yeah, they kind of glowed like hitting the deer's eyes at night. You know how a deer eye will glow?
Mm-hmm.
They kind of glowed, yeah.
And what colour was that?
They were kind of reddish looking.
And in terms of the activity here, you talked about vocalizations. What sort of vocalizations did you do?
We heard a lot of yipping, a lot of yelling. At one point in time, I come out and listened to a couple owls that I thought was an owl. One was on this side, one was on that side, and at the very end of that, they went on about 10 minutes. At the very end of that, they started grunting, so I knew that wasn't owls.
Did they ever display any aggression at all?
No, sir, never. Never.
The time when you found those prints, because they're so remarkable, that I've thought about them ever since I first saw them.
Mm-hmm.
So please take that as a compliment.
Thank you.
When you found those prints, can you talk us through where and when it was and what happened?
It was like in the fall, kind of later in the fall. It had been wet that year, and we just happened to drive down this old road that had a huge mud hole in it.
Near here?
Yep, just down the road down there,
Mm-hmm.
From one of them spurs that goes up in there, and it was in the middle of that mud. That's why the track was so good, because it was in that mud, and it was in an area where they had drove through, and of course it had a ridge, which made the ground a lot easier to take. But we only found one because he stepped one step here, and the next step was beyond that, and I couldn't find that.
Right.
Yeah.
So was it October, November, just sort of?
Let's see. It was probably in October. That's about when deer season started.
And what year was that?
1998, I think, or 97. One of them. I'm not exactly yet. Yeah, it should be in my book.
So when you come back to this area, is this an area that you consider to be particularly hotbed of Bigfoot activity?
Yes, sir. Because every year we came back here from 98 to 2001, and every year we had activity. Every year we've seen something.
Is there any? I'm asking you to speculate now, and I know that rather than factual opinion, but bearing in mind your experience over so many years, I'm interested in what we can learn. So why do you think that this area is an area that would be attractive to Bigfoot?
Well, I think because there's a lot of water source. Excuse me. The lake is here, and then you have a lot of creeks down that way. Down that way is where I found this plant that they ate. They ate the whole plant except just the leaf tossed inside. and there was a lot of what we called sugar plums, which are those purple things on a tree. There was a lot of that. And it was just initial, there wasn't that many people that was within this area at the point in time when I started coming up here. And nobody bothered them. We didn't bother them. So every time we came back, it wasn't long till they would start hooting and hollering like they were telling me that they knew I was back.
So, is it possible that you could emulate the noise that they made, copy sort of what they... Was it a whoop, whoop, or something?
That was a whoop, whoop.
And they do that when you arrive.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Or they would beat on a tree.
and when they beat on a tree, was there a specific sequence, or was there one?
Three. One,
Three.
2, 3.
So we want to do 3.
1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3 like that to make it work. Yeah?
And as loud as you can do it.
Okay. So that's the key, because we've been doing 1, so we want 1, 2, 3.
Yep. No, 3.
Now, bearing in mind what I've just said, because obviously we're looking to get some evidence if we possibly can, very respectfully, building on your research, your excellent research. How would you advise us to proceed over the next few days if we want to get results?
Number 1, you need to be yourself. You need to just go about what you're doing and just do what you do the best. That's the only. So all I can tell you, that's what we did. We decided to go hike. We'd go hike. If we found evidence, we found evidence. If we didn't, we didn't. But we never gave up. And that's about the only thing I can tell you. Just do what you've been doing, and sooner or later, once they find out that you're not here to hurt them, I think you'll see more of them.
How would you feel if your evidence led to ultimately a scientific discovery? What do you want for the Bigfoot?
What I want for the Bigfoot, I want them protected. They've been here a lot longer than we have. They're very intelligent. They can mimic any animal in the woods. And I would like to see where they get to the point where you can't just walk up and kill one or go find one and kill one. I would like for them to have some kind of protection. And I would like for it to be serious enough that nobody would even consider shooting one.
Absolute proof to make sure that people know if they are real.
Yes. Yes. And I believe in my heart that this is an area that you can absolutely prove that they are 100%. I believe it in my heart. I know what I found. I know what I've seen.
Bearing in mind that I've asked you a number of questions, and thank you for your patience, is there anything any detail that you want to share that you feel like we've missed, that we need to cover, that will help us?
No, you guys are doing just about what I would do. You're taking your hikes, which is good. You're not being noisy. You're not firing guns, which is good. I can tell you where I went and where some of the places that I've seen, some of the things I found. I can tell you all of that. I could probably show you if I wasn't. It's getting old.
What else have you found that you feel we haven't yet covered in our discussion?
Down the road here, I just showed Mr. Bill where it was at. Up in there, we went in. There's a bunch of homesteads up in there. So we walked, because I'm into homesteads. I got a book this thick on old homesteads. Mm-hmm. And I showed him where to go. And you go up that old 2-track, and there's some homesteads. And you go straight back in there. And in the process of us going in there, we found these plants growing underneath this creek. And that was tall. I drew it's all on my book. Bill will show you later.
Yeah.
Got all that information. And they had pulled it up out of the ground. Now, it had some kind of a bulb on it. And it reminded me of maybe a small potato or a wild onion. And they would eat that and eat the stem up to about this close to the leaf. They would throw the leaf down. Now, I know that was Bigfoot. If it had been a bear would have dug it up, not just pulled it up out of the ground. So nobody can tell me that was a bear doing that.
One last question from me. if that's okay, is there any particular time of year when you think that there is more of a concentration of activity in this location? When's the best time to search?
It seems like to me we done a lot better like in, well, we was here from June till September, and as it started getting a little further along in the summertime, we didn't see as much because the ground would be so dry. We couldn't find the tracks. So coming in the spring, from June, would be a perfect time. Even May, if you could get up here in May, would be a good perfect time because the ground's soft. You can pick up tracks a lot easier.
But the physical interaction with the creatures was consistent throughout those months. So the activity, so they were here throughout that period. There wasn't a time when they went away and then came back.
No, sir.
So they're based in, you think they're based in this vicinity?
Yeah, this is my base for my research, and we interacted all summer long.
That's awesome. Thank you, Laura. Those are my questions. Gentlemen, do you have any more questions that you think?
Yeah, you were talking, Laura, of deer. So they do eat meat.
Yes, sir.
So that would be, a food source for them around here.
Well, they'll be opportunistic feeders. So like us, they'll be omnivorous, I would speculate. So they'll eat whatever they can get hold of.
We did find a deer at the end of the lake, and I think there's a report in that that the deer was down. It was sick. It looked like maybe a cougar had got a hold of it, and so I called Fred Bradshaw and told him. He said, "Will you stay on that deer?" Because this was really a lot of activity around here. So in about 3 days we went back. The deer was gone, but it had picked it. And the reason I knew it picked it up, something had picked it up, because the hair was, some of the deer hair was on some limbs about 5-6 foot in the air, where maybe it had been thrown over the shoulder, and we tracked him back into the woods, and the deer was completely devoured. All that was left was some of the skull, the ribs, but it was completely devoured. And in the process, we come across some scat that was about this much and about this high.
That's a considerable amount.
Yeah, and Mr. Bradshaw told me to watch for that, and I thought, you're full of baloney. You're giving me a bad story. And it's true. So I took 3 sticks. I put one here, and one here, and I put a black bag over the top of it. I called Mr. Bradshaw. He came up 3 days later, and I took him up there, and he said, that's what it is. It's Bigfoot scat. So we took the bag off, and it was at the end of the lake. And so he said, let's go up and get some things and we'll get a sample. We come back here and went right back, and something had went in there and went like this and had pulled every bit of that out of there, and the sticks was still standing, and it was gone.
Some people, I had an additional question based on what you just said. Some people might say, attribute Bigfoot to having magical properties, some sort of paranormal phenomenon. Other people say, well, it's a physical creature that blends into the environment. What do you think, Laura?
I think it's some kind of a caveman that never revolved. That's what I think. I mean, that's my own opinion. They will intermingle with you. They're skittishy. They don't like being harassed.
Like to keep to themselves.
Yeah, they will let you see them when they want you to see them. That's the main thing about hunting for Bigfoot. I mean, if you're calm, you're cool, and and they get to know you, and you're not going to hurt them, you'll see them. It just takes time.
Well, I hope you get lucky.
Yeah, I do too. I really hope you guys do.
Thank you ever so much for that. That's a wealth of knowledge, and we're all very grateful. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I just wish you guys all the luck in the world, but if you keep trying, you'll get to see one. You'll find the evidence that you want. It probably took me a couple years before we really started interacting with them. They're kind of standoffish when we first got here. kind of quiet. You could hear them, you know, moving around the camp, but before the time was over that I quit, they were coming right down to my camp. It wouldn't bother nothing. I mean, you know, like I said, they would take things off my table, and but they would always leave something. One time it was a fern, one time it was a pine cone, one time it was a little piece of wood. But whatever they take from you, they give back to you.
So
Like
it was kind of like trading, like beads and goods and things like that natives would, you know, and other people would do. You know, they trade for this, for that. You know.
It was like a friendly gesture.
It shows a level of sentience, a higher level of sentience.
They're really smart. They're really intelligent. They got to be to live as long as they have and stay hid as long as they have.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much, Laura.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it. Thank you.